Lucetta's performance in Georgia certainly has started him off on the right foot. But there are many experienced heads waiting to challenge and overthrow our current champion. Will the craziness of Watkins Glen upset the apple cart? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 2 of the Absolute Beginners League Formula Neagle, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Watkins Glen International has been the scene of some of the wildest ABL races we've seen on this channel. Let's head to our track guide to learn why. Welcome to Watkins Glen International. Situated in upstate New York, just south of the Finger Lakes, this track has seen it all. Few road circuits can boast hosting Formula 1, IndyCar, NASCAR, and IMSA during its history. Though it did have a brief fallow period in the early 80s, thanks to the investment of local companies, it's grown into one of the premier road tracks in the U.S. With 4 layouts to choose from that range between 2.5 and 3.5 miles in length, lap times can vary greatly. But it also means it's suitable for lots of different levels of racing, from amateur to pro. The one thing that stays consistent no matter which car and which layout you're using is that Watkins Glen means speed. Many of the straights are very long, and the majority of the corners are fast sweepers. Some of them include a surprising amount of banking as well. Combine that with the proximity of the barriers, and this historic circuit retains a very old-school feel. Drivers in lesser-powered cars can expect drafting battles, while higher-powered machinery will test the skill and bravery of their pilots. Some of the turns are visually iconic, such as the carousel and the S's. Others, like the inner loop, the chute, and turn 9, greatly challenge even the expertly skilled. And of course, we haven't even mentioned the drastic amount of elevation change drivers experience. Between its rich history and popularity among drivers, this track stays busy and seems likely to be that way for a long, long time. DJ, we're used to seeing a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, more powerful cars running this version of Watkins Glen, but taking the Skippy out on the NASCAR Cup course, what is that going to be like?
Well, Joe, as you can imagine, without us running the boot, there's going to be a little less turning than we are used to, and this circuit's really going to function almost like an oval for these very light Skippy cars. What it also means is that a high emphasis is going to be placed on the draft in trying to get up through the S's and into that inner loop. Now, that inner loop, that little bus stop right before the outer loop long right-hander at the end of the backstretch, that's going to be your best overtaking opportunity. But what's really going to make things different about that is that little bit, only a couple of 100 yards difference, it's going to make the timing of the draft different. Drivers are going to have to be a little bit closer, I think, to really pull off a better move. And they're not going to really be as easily able to battle side by side going into that bus stop. Drivers are going to have to try to get the move done before they get onto the powers. Going too wide through that bus stop chicane is very, very difficult. Now, as normally is the case, one of the most crucial corners is going to be the 90, the downhill sweeping right-hander that represents the first corner on this track, because that's going to set up the lead going to it. But one way or another, Joe, even though this may have fewer corners than we're used to, it is still going to present a handful for these drivers out here today.
It's got its own difficulties, that's for sure. But let's take a look at the championship after our first round. Lucetta up at the top spot. Francisco is the one behind him with Simonson, Burns, and Junk rounding out our top 5. Pretty much how they finished, as there's no bonus points in this series, so not too much to really split things apart much. We also have an F2 championship, however. DJ, how's that sit?
Well, Joe, in that, Christopher Giros currently sits on top of the standings, just 3 points ahead of Wojciech Podacek. Steve Dorr behind them in third, with Christopher Crook and Ludwig Sauer rounding out the top 5. Again, that is only after one round, so plenty of room for all of these drivers to play going forward.
And the one thing that can be shaken up is the team's championship. And interestingly, we have a tie up at the top. Two Stupid Dogs and Racecraft Esports share that top spot, and a tie in second. Evolve and Video Browers are sitting there 6 points back. Then you've got Bushfink Racing Pink, iRacing UK Lime, and Street Trends Team 1 rounding out your top 5. We'll see how that winds up after today, because teamwork will certainly be important in the qualifying, which is coming up in a moment. But let's also, DJ, talk about the race details that we have coming up here in a moment.
Well, we are on the second of only 5 rounds in the 24th season of the Absolute Beginners League Formula Neagle Series, and very crucially, there are no drop rounds, so if you've got a bad race, it will come back to bite you. As we've mentioned, we are racing those Skip Barber Formula 2000s cars, those little skippies, so narrow tires, and just a wee bit of downforce to make things interesting. Now, it's going to be a 45-minute race preceded by a 10-minute qualifying session where all cars are able to be out on track. That's going to be crucial because the drivers are going to want to pick up the draft from the cars around them. And also important to note, during the race, these fuel tanks are limited, so there will be one pit stop guaranteed. There you see that 50% fuel limit, and also with that, you do have open setups to kind of tweak and tune the cars to whatever your liking is. Also, and this is a very different thing, we normally don't see this in a lot of series, we have a standing start, and with such a wide corner as the first corner, that could create a lot of chaos on the first lap.
Everybody's expected to fan out, and hopefully we get most of them through, if not all, by some miracle. We're watching the first of our cars come through to complete a lap here. And someone going off track in front of Neptune. That looks to be Eric Lukel. We were talking about it before we came live, how important having your teammate with you is going to be in this very short qualifying session. Only 10 minutes, and all the cars are out there at once.
Indeed, Joe, you've really got to play the teamwork game. Rest assured that these drivers are going to be in contact with their teammates or their buddies around them, just trying to maximize the draft. I think it could be worth as much as a second if drivers play this car right. We ride on board right now with Vincent Bream as he makes his way around. You see him there poking his nose ever so slightly to the inside there of, I believe that's Lukel ahead of him, just trying to pick up some clean air when they were going through the S's. Now he's getting out of the way, letting the 63 go on by him. That's Christopher Crook, and now slots back into line.
Down through the inner loop, and all of them managed to get by that successfully. Drivers will have to try and keep clean because 1X's can be picked up through that little chicane section. And after only 17, they will get a drive-through penalty, which will absolutely wreck your race here in only a 40-minute event. That's a Bream who we hop on board with once. Not sure if he's trying to set himself up for a run later or what exactly, because he's definitely lifting a lot here. Is now in front of him, Christopher Crook definitely getting a good toe off of Ludwig Sauer. He's going to be among our first drivers to get a real, true, full flying lap. And now the board is starting to be populated. Crook temporarily at least holding that fastest lap. Others coming in behind them. Brain looking good, less than a tenth behind Christopher currently.
Yeah, things getting very close up at the top. And Joe, I think you hit the nail on the head there with what some of these drivers are doing. They're backing off a little bit through those final corners so they can get an absolute maximum draft going down the straightaway. What you don't want to have to do if you're on a hot lap is pop out to the inside, run an alternate racing line, get ahead of somebody. You want to basically just pull up as close as you can behind the car in front of you, and then be in the position right here that we see Wojciech Podesek and Christopher Crook in, where they're just able to run and let the car in front of them take all of that dirty air, or clean air rather.
Now, here's what fascinates me. I noticed in the warm-up session that Manuel Lucetta, our points leader, was not very high up the order, but he also wasn't riding with anybody that I could make out. So he didn't seem to be making any sort of attempt to try and use the slipstream to get quicker laps. And he's not with anybody right now in qualifying. His first lap is actually good enough for fifth. That's pretty good considering he's going it solo. But the Italian, yeah, you can see, and he's weaving the tires around now. They must be trying to heat them up, as it does take a bit to try and get them up to temperature. This definitely is not going to be a hot lap for him.
No, it's not. And Joe, I have to say that running by himself right now, as we watch David Burns popping up to the top of the charts, running solo right now is a bit puzzling from our points leader, but I think what that could mean, extrapolating a little bit from running by himself in practice, could be that he has a car that is specifically tuned to run in clean air, which means he is going to want to put in the best qualifying time he can and hopefully get out to the front, and he is tuned to stay there.
Looking to see if we have any other packs besides this one, all clumped together. And they're actually approaching Manuel Lachetta, but I don't think they're going to catch him, at least not within this less than 5 minutes that we've got, as Podolak and Crook go side by side temporarily and now come back into line. All of them trying to sort themselves out here at the end of the lap. Moving to the back of that group is Zamolo currently, or no, excuse me, Zauer rather, in the 14.
Yeah, and you can see even behind them a train starting to develop as well. Ooh, that's a big spin there. I wasn't sure exactly who that is, but that
was Zamolo.
That was Zamolo. It's not going to be a good time for him.
And Zauer hit him. It was very, very slight, but it looks like he's lost touch with that group in front of him. And if he's got a damaged car, that'll make it very hard to make fast laps.
It will indeed, and he is coming very, very close to the now or never mark. So if he does have damage to that car, he better get back to the pits quick, get a new car, and get back out on track. But now we're going to watch here. This is Christopher Crook. He's currently third, getting tailed up behind. That's Vincent Bream and David Burns behind him. There you see Burns popping to the inside, getting that draft, getting that better slipstream. There you see Crook lets him by, so that's just some good tactics there. Everybody playing it nice and easy.
Oof, taking a lot of that inside there. I'd be surprised if Crook didn't get a 1X in his run across the curb. Love this angle from Dougie, just inside the roll hoop. Not often that we see that.
Yeah, it's kind of great. You can see the actual impression of the roll hoop out the outside, but Daniele Camilleri currently popping up to the top of the charts by quite a margin, Joe. That's over 0.3 of a second.
Ooh, so can Burns, Brame, Crook, and any of those guys manage to go any faster? As we see our now pole sitter coming across. Crook this time across does not count that lap, so he must have gone off. And David Burns by 0.2 of a second over Camilleri.
Mega lap there from David Burns. And I really think, Joe, what you are seeing here at this point, these times may not necessarily be indicative of the driver's, skill or ability to pilot around. I really think it's coming down to, are you able to time the draft perfectly? And that is what that is representing from these times, and it's just very impressive.
Yeah, I think I'd agree on that one. And these three certainly having a bit of a difficult time trying to sort it out heading into the bus stop chicane. So we watch from Podolak, who's still down in 6th on the timing sheets. We are less than 2 minutes to go. If drivers want to get a lap in, they've got to get out of the pits now and get going. And I can actually tell you, I think we're lacking about 8 drivers with a lap time currently here in this qualifying session.
Yeah, a lot of guys not coming out. Fortunately, not a lot of guys that we are used to seeing at the pointy end of the grid. Mackenzie Mann, one of the ones that we're normally seeing, is a good, solid mid-packer. He is back there. But we're riding out the back, looking here at Christopher Crook. He's going to go past on the main straightaway. Is he going to go 2 for 1? Is he? No, he's going to slide in behind Podolak and in front of David Burns.
And he jumped himself up to 3rd with that last lap. Podolak's quickest lap was the last one as well. He gets into 6th. Burns took the opportunity to drop behind since he is still on the pole. Camilleri right now. Oh, he got a run from Special. Then the number 37. So I wonder if we're going to see the 33 take this fastest lap right back.
Very well might. He comes through the final corner right now, coming to the line. Good, clean exit there. Carries plenty of speed. Let's see what he's got.
26.077 is his quickest. Oh, that one didn't count. And he doesn't have anybody in front of him to give him a tow. I don't think he's going to be able to steal this one away unless he just has something incredible waiting for him as he goes very wide, and that might have actually discounted that final lap right there.
I think it did indeed, Joe. You know, you are able to really take a lot of that concrete runoff to the outside and not pick up a penalty for it, but you will get a very heavy one if you cross over the grass on re-entry. Riding on board with Ludwig Sauer right now. Sauer in an uncharacteristically low qualifying position, down in 20th, so let's see what he's got.
Lucetta finally got himself some help, and that put him on the second row with a fourth place. Ludwig is coming across, and a 25.8 is going to put him all the way up into second as a bunch of them have some fun there, the qualifying now being over.
Yeah, so now we're just waiting for some of the final cars to cross over the line and see if anybody is able to pip David Burns to pole.
Dura goes a little bit quicker. He'll get to 14th with that one. Let's see who else is now coming across the line. Wilfert doesn't go faster. Gruhl also fails to improve. Perez, 27.0, gets himself up into 18th from last on the grid. Nicely done there. Bernardi in the 85 is next, and he gets a 27.5, so that's his quickest. That actually gets him up to P27. And then up next is Stipek. Not able to go any quicker there. Mild, his teammate, also not improving.
And now it looks like we are just waiting for the 16th place car of Neil Smet to cross over the line, currently the last runner.
Yeah, he looks a little bit slow here, and he's got damage, so yep, that's not going to count, unfortunately. That means our grid is set, and it is David Burns who starts on the pole. Ludwig Sauer in the late stages gets up onto the front row. Camerari will be starting P3 with Crook in fourth. Lucetta, P5 for him, followed by Bamber in sixth and Eric Lukel in P7. And you've got Taylor Reeder in eighth and Frederick Neptune in ninth, and Vincent Brame rounds out your top 10.
Starting off in 11th will be Andrea Speciale, followed by series organizer Wojciech Potacek in 12th. Josh Brain will be 13th, followed by Christopher Giros, and behind them, Steve Durr and Neil Smet. And Joe, take a look at these times as they start to roll in an incredibly close midfield here. Very, very impressive. Alexander Wilfert in 17th, Christian Perez in 18th, Jan Mild in 19th, and Nick Carty 20th.
21st goes to Christian Gruhl and Callum Mooney in 22nd. Then it's Simone Zamolo in 23rd. Sean McKenzie, P24, followed by Foltesi in 25th, Dancy in 26th, and Bernardi in 27th. Saunders, P28, and Thomas 29th, with Prado starting 30th.
Peter Stepek is going to be 31st, followed by Damian Van Immersil, Klaus Loden behind them, and John Gustafson, Pete Bladden, Joe Turner McMullen behind them. Mackenzie Mann, followed by Przemysław Pianizek in 38th. 39th is Washington Louise. Atialgar is 40th, and rounding out the back of the field, Barry Stockdale.
With that, the last of our drivers are now making their way out to the grid. Standing start down into the 90. And thankfully, they don't go far enough that they actually wind around that back corner. But even still, we're looking at 41 drivers out there today taking part in round 2 of the Absolute Beginners League Formula Neagle. Last few seconds of the clock as the engines now start to rev and the lights come up. Green flag is out. And off the line, David Burns starts to pick up pace, but he's already being caught by Ludwig Sauer down into the 90. How are we going to look as all of them plunge into this wide corner? So far, so good. 3 wide, almost 4 wide somewhere towards the back. And I think we are clean through. Fantastic job.
Exactly. Now we got to be careful into the next danger zone, though. Coming up, the S's, everybody looking like they are getting a little bit racy, but keeping it together. Burns pulling out a bit of a lead there. Camieri able to move up ever so slightly. Sauer around them as well.
Still looking good, but Now we come to the braking of the inner loop, where you want to be single file if you're wise, and the leaders so far are all wise. Only double wide I'm seeing so far is Special and Potacek. They eventually get that sorted out. A few more behind them is also still trying to challenge. One off course, and I think that was Sean McKenzie who eventually caught the car. Otherwise, so far, so good.
Indeed, and a draft trend really starting to develop up front. Christopher Crook, the last in that car, starting to pull away ever so slightly from Camilleri. Right now, your top three holding it: Sauer, Burns, and Crook. And we've got somebody off in the background.
That's Bamber. Oh, and someone else spinning behind him. That is Special again, finding himself in trouble. We did have one car. Ooh, as Special gets hit. We didn't see it on screen, and there's going to be a couple cars that unfortunately make contact with him. You can see them now sliding into the exit of the final turn.
Ooh, and a big Shamazo coming through the final corner as well. Many cars off from the mid-pack. Looks like I'm seeing Bamber, Voltezi, Stipik, Van Immersel, Mooney, Speciale. Lots of drivers having to come into the pits for repairs.
Well, the good news is they at least have that spare car to help them out as our leaders start to play the game that we're used to seeing here at Watkins Glen. Going 3 wide, actually, down to the very inside. That is Christopher Crook, but he's going to pause before he manages to overtake Burns and try to get it a second. Oh, but he loses control, and he's going to slide off. He'll manage to keep it out of the barriers by a hair.
I don't know how he managed to hold on to that, Joe, and I thought for sure there may have been a little bit of contact between him and David Burns. They looked very close.
Let's get an onboard with the 63. That was a fantastic job keeping that from becoming a wreck as he just bounced across the gravel trap there. There he is on board, looking at 3 wide, sees a good chance to get himself involved, then decides, no, I don't want to try and challenge for the lead. It just gets a little unsettled, sawing away at the wheel, and about half a foot to spare in the end.
It's a very impressive off-roading display there from Christopher Crook. You're able to see him rejoining it back into line, but that demotes him all the way down into 19th. And so there you see him. That is Durr, Smet, and Mild in the 3-way battle right in front of him.
And strangely, Stipek, who's one of those that had problems on that first lap, has just come back out of the pits amongst the leaders. So now they've got the complication of a lapped car involved. And there, as boy, Crook is certainly not afraid to get right on top of other cars.
No, he's not. There you can see, ooh, this is very dicey. Stipik trying to stay out of the way of everybody else, able to keep out through the bus stop there, and that's going to create a little bit of a gap now, about a second back from second place Ludwig Sauer and Danielle Camilleri.
Wow, that was incredibly risky. 3 wide situations there with our leaders coming through the bus stop, and still somehow nobody wrecked and all of that. Now Stipik starting to slow and try and let everybody through. Indeed, you're right. Burns and Sauer with 9/10 over Camilleri. Curious, do you have an idea of what the break-off, the cutoff is on where that slipstream stops pulling you forward?
My experience in these skippies, Joe, is it's somewhere between about a second and a second and a half is where you're going to see it. It may be a little more or a little less in that range. So I think right about now, if I'm Camilleri, I'm getting very concerned about losing touch with the leaders. And if that's the case, it is not going to be good.
Well, he's just under a second back right now, so that's within the window that you were saying. Let's see what kind of effect it has, though. This is going to be valuable information, both for Danielle and for us, as Sauer is going to go side by side with Burns. You can see up the road. I don't think it's quite working right now with the two of them working together, though. It's 1.1, but he's going to get a little bit of help because Christian Perez comes alongside him and is going to overtake the spot.
Indeed, and if you're sitting back in that position, ooh, as we were on board with Bladden there, as he is trying not to get not to hold up the leaders there. Bladden, a lapped car. You can see them all streaming by. But as I was saying, Joe, if you are sitting in Camilleri or Perez's situation right now, you want to play leapfrog as a way to get up to the front.
Oh, we've had a wreck. Unfortunately, Sean McKenzie, it looks like, involved in this one. And, oh no, guess who else was involved in it? Christopher Crook. Again, he's been a little spicy out there today, shall we say.
We're jumping back to check out the replay here. There you can see it, this coming into the braking zone here, diving down. Crook just able to keep it together. Coming out of the second part, just misjudged it and sends both cars spinning around.
Yeah, Filippo was trying to take avoiding action, and that sent him into the wall with a big thwack. So he's got major damage. I expect him to be into the pits to get his spare car. There's the touch that you can see between them. McKenzie actually, I think, got away with it pretty mild. Just lost a lot of spots, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there you can see Christopher Crook, normally not one of those drivers that is, let us say, accident prone, but it goes to show what can happen if you just have a little bit of a bad opening couple of laps. It can throw you off your game very, very easily.
We're riding on board with Sauer once again, and Perez has run him down. So that second pack, bringing along Camerari, Lucetta, and Neptune, has made it a 6-car group. And then they go back about 2.2 seconds to Potacek. So not as likely we'll see them catch them, but not impossible. Is this finally going to be a nice, calm quintet, septet that we've got here? Sextet, there we go, that's the right word. Coming out of the final corner. Because these are all drivers that have experience in this series and these skippies. So I'm kind of wondering if we'll stop seeing a lot of side-by-side action into some of the more risky corners and start seeing them just kind of play the long game.
Well, Joe, that is normally what we see from this series after the first couple of laps. The counter to that, I will say, is that we've also seen guys like Perez and Lucetta not be afraid to spice things up a little bit in the early stages and be a little bit more aggressive when everybody else is maybe in a bit of a fuel-saving mentality.
Man, Christian up from P18 on the grid, and we haven't had any real major wrecks up at the front, so he's made that just by leapfrogging, is working his way forward, which is massively impressive. Behind him, Neptune managed to overtake Camerari and Lucetta along the backstretch that time, so now the Trident finds himself within the top 4.
He does indeed, and it's really interesting, Joe. I'm keeping an eye on Perez through the outer loop there, that long right-handed 180-degree turn. He has a different line than all of the leaders. The leaders are taking a bit of a later apex and kind of doing what you would traditionally think is the line through a hairpin. Perez is almost diamonding off the corner, keeping it very narrow on entry and exit. And clearly it's working for him. He's keeping touch with the drivers in front of him. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on through the later parts of the race if that alternate line will come out to benefit Perez.
Definitely looking a lot calmer now, I will say. So I think these drivers are essentially being patient here with only 10 minutes into this race, less than 10 minutes to be honest. The second group, by the way, includes Potacek and up at the front, Reeder, Guerros, Lucal, Brame, and Brain. And right now we're riding on board with Neil Smet, who sits in 17th. He's at pretty much the back of our next big group, with Gruel behind him, Crook in front of him, Bladen, Mild, and Dewar up in 14th. As we check in on that second pack now, it looks like they're going to have Reeder up in the front instead.
Yeah, Potacek getting a little bit of a double pass done on him there. That's not going to upset him too much. That is a little bit par for the course. If you decide to lift off, it's not surprising to see two drivers go by, but we ride on board looking out the back of Taylor Reeder, the Indiana driver's machine. Right now, you can see there, that is Guerros behind him getting very close. I think if Guerros wants it, he may be able to have a move coming up through the S's.
Sliding way wide, though. Wheels off into the grass, unfortunately for Reeder, putting him offline into the final turn. Should be an easy overtake for Guerros because of that. He's already to the inside.
Yeah, just banking on the fact that Reeder was going to overrun the corner a little bit, and rightly so. Reeder doesn't look like he's necessarily going to back off quite yet. There's a little bit of a lift. He's going to let Guerros go by. Now, Reeder will be able to get a very good draft here, at least in the early stages, but he may get caught out, Joe, because he doesn't have the full draft, and he'll have to kind of feather the throttle coming up through the S's.
That's a good point. It's all about that timing. And, ooh, speaking of timing, our leaders are now starting to shuffle things up a little bit, including Neptune getting boxed in by the likes of Perez and Burns. He had a great run and then decided he had to back out of it. You can see he's even shallow right now coming through the inner loop. As to his side, he had Sauer. He loses some time, but not a drastic amount. It's only 7/10 up to Christian Perez. I think they'll be able to run that back down.
They certainly will. And Joe, a lot of that was precipitated by Perez being a little aggressive going into it. Looking out the back of Podacek here, that is Gyros now. Gyros thinking about it, maybe seeing if he can force the same mistake he made with Taylor Reeder coming through that penultimate corner.
Yep, they're all just going to stay put. This is a, I believe, 7-car group in this one. No, it's 6 once again. Wonder if that's our magic number of how many most drivers are willing to keep together before it just starts becoming a mess amongst them, as the leaders now plunge down into the first corner once again, and already the gap between Perez and Neptune is down to 0.6 of a second and closing.
Yeah, Neptune definitely not letting him get away. Now, let's keep an eye here as we ride on board with Neptune. I'm interested to see what Perez does. As I mentioned a little bit ago, he is a bit of a more aggressive driver than some of the likes that we've seen here. So let's see if he decides to try to take the lead for himself. I think he's checking up here, though. So not going to do it then. Neptune pokes his nose to the inside ever so slightly. I think just trying to see if he can get inside of Perez's head. Now, something to keep in mind, about 3.5 seconds up the road, Angelo Fulci is right up there, so that's going to be some slow traffic these guys are going to have to contend with.
That's already caused them some headaches a little bit earlier on, too, so will be a problem unless that lapped car is keeping a heads up. Don't need to go to it. I can tell you that Neil Smet unfortunately had an off and managed to avoid the barriers down in the inner loop. He's still running. Watching from 5th place, Camerari, as he comes off the final corner. Gets a good view of Sauer closing in on Neptune, but he lifts as they come up towards the 90 behind them. Someone getting up alongside. I think that was Podacek, potentially giving up to Gyros, who's now second in line in the second group.
He was indeed a little bit more spaced out for this lead pack now as they head their way up through the S's. Let's see if anybody decides to have a little bit of moxie and make a play. At the back of that pack, it looks like Lucetta, your points leader's got a good run on Camilleri if he wants it. Nope, looks like Lucetta's going to back off, but oh, we're almost 3 wide for the lead.
And yeah, Neptune is going to get up to the point now. Timed it perfectly, and he'll be now ahead of David Burns as Perez gets slotted back into 3rd. Ludwig Sauer was probably going to be taking notes on that one. Let's take another look. Yeah, just once again sized it up just right, and I think Burns maybe facilitated it a bit himself.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't necessarily think Neptune was going for broke here, trying to take the lead, but I think Burns just kind of said, okay, you want to take it, you've got it. Now, that was really all facilitated in the beginning by the fact that Perez ran a little bit of a wider line through the S's and didn't necessarily tuck up in the draft, getting a face full of clean air, and that slowed him down ever so slightly. So that may have been an indication from Perez that he wanted to fall back in line a little bit and maybe try to save even more fuel.
Had a bit of an accident. Prado involved with that one back at the inner loop, and a few others unfortunately taking some damage. Looks like Loden, McMullen, and Gustafsson all unfortunately caught up in what was a bit of a mess. As we continue to watch our leaders, and here we go again, but this time Neptune has to play defense as David Burns gets by him and regains the lead.
Yeah, Burns now back up to the pointy end of the field. Looks like everybody's slotting in line there, and there you see Perez, but we're going to keep an eye here on that second group. This is now riding on board with Vincent Bream. You see him hugging that inside curbing, not wanting to ride over it. That'll upset the car ever so slightly. Just watching and waiting here at this point.
Ooh, and popping out, looks like Giros is going to try his hand at things, leading. Reeder gets slotted back into 8th. So now Christopher up into the 7th position. We check in on that front group where it is Lucetta now waiting. If I was those at the front, though, I would be a little bit concerned about that 91 riding at the very back of this group, because I have a feeling he's saving a whole heap of fuel.
I definitely think that's right, Joe, and I think everybody is going to know that in the back of their minds. And for Lucetta, what he basically needs to do at this point is just make sure he is in touch with these leaders. He doesn't need to be hyper-aggressive. He doesn't need to try to lead right now. He just needs to make sure that he does not lose touch. There you see Camilleri slowing a little bit. Ooh, we've got a lot of slicing and dicing up front.
And yeah, those are our leaders, almost going 3 wide for a minute. Neptune taking it away from Perez. Perez sliding a little bit. Bobble from Frederick as he takes a lot of curbs. Sauer finds himself in 3rd and Burns down in P4. Now, Formula Neagle for a long time has been using this Skip Barber car, but iRacing has recently announced that the Formula V is coming as we get another pass there. Fantastic shot from Sauer. Oh, but he's going to go side by side down through the penultimate turn. They manage it safely, but they got to be careful how much they do those side by side battles here, since we're only halfway through the lap, or through the race itself. But I'm curious, DJ, whether or not the series will finally elect to leave this Skip Barber car for Formula Neagle, since it's kind of been baby's first open wheeler for a long time for this series, and now kind of replaced on the iRacing service with that Formula V.
Indeed, and it's a question the organizers are going to have to figure out if they want to do. For those unfamiliar with the Formula V, they're very similar in construction to these Skippy cars, as there you see that is Neptune trying to take a little bit of an attack on Sauer, but very similar to these cars, but less downforce even, almost no wing on the car. They're going to go 3 wide here, Joe.
Perez in the middle, and he's going to be the one to hold out in this game of chicken as Neptune stays in 2nd and Sauer falls back in 3rd. This is getting spicy now. When we were on board with Lucetta, we could hear him lifting and clutching as well. So I'm pretty certain that he is going to come out the best of this group, as everybody else just basically plays games at the front.
Exactly, and Joe, this run right here, coming off of the outer loop, this is what is interesting to me in particular. Now, you saw in the early stages of the race, nobody was really trying to make a pass there. Everybody was just staying in line, and the only passes we saw were going down into that inner loop bus stop. But as we've got a lot of pitters. Last lap, it was Neil Bamber, but now it looks like we've got Sauer and Burns diving in, as well as Podacek and Bream behind them.
So 2 of them deciding to pit in at the halfway mark, as we've got just a minute until the exact moment for that, leaving Neptune and Perez nearly more than a second over Camilleri. And if that splits them up, could this mean that Danielle and Lucetta have trouble keeping up with those front 2, or can they manage to use this slipstream to really run them down?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question here, Joe, and that's what I was talking about with Lucetta and being worried. And there, indeed, you see Lucetta getting aggressive, going to the outside there of Camilleri. He knows he has the speed now, and he has got to put in an absolutely mega lap and try to gain as much time as he can, because he does not want to come out of the pits alone with no draft partners, because that will spell disaster for the 91.
Here's what's fascinating. Bamber has come out ahead of Sauer and Burns. In fact, by a decent margin, Podacek along with him too.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm looking at it Okay, Bamber had a 5.5 second pit stop, so that is the underfuel of the century potentially.
Yeah. Okay, so he stopped early, so excuse me. Bamber has not taken his scheduled fuel stop. Apologies for that. Oh, and Neptune responds. Neptune is in.
All right, there you go. That's going to turn over the lead of the race to Christian Perez. But his problem is he is now lone man on track. Nobody around him. Lucetta and Camilleri there about 2 seconds adrift of the number 89, your leader. So this is going to be interesting. This is where that draft is really going to come into play. We're going to have to see how strategy goes. You can bet Lucetta now no longer in fuel conservation mode. He is putting the pedal to the metal.
So will Potacek come out ahead of guys like Neptune? Neptune has fallen down the order, but he is moving. Can he catch the toe? He'll be just behind Burns, and yes, it looks like he'll be close enough that he'll be able to reel him back in.
Yeah, so they're all going to slot in there. Importantly, they are able to get ahead of Pete Bladden there, who's a lapped car, so that'll give them a good position. Looks like Burns is only about 1.5 seconds up the road, and with these two working in tandem, that will be, I think, enough to be able to close the gap.
Missing about 11 cars that still need to take their pit stops. All of them currently up within the top 10 except for one. And as we watch from onboard Lucetta, yet another lap through that he's not interested in pitting, still trailing behind Danielle. And that is Reeder behind him as we hop off board. Also holding station. Now, Reeder was with the second group, so this to me says that Taylor actually has better pace than them potentially because he's had no help running them down.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very, very interesting development there. Reeder may be one of the better placed cars if he does have that speed. Now, Joe, I'm taking a quick look at lap times as some of those drivers cross the line who just came into the pits. 27.4, 26.8, 26.7, 26.8. That is good news for Manuel Lucetta, who ran a 26.6 the last time out. So he is still faster than the drivers he was racing with in the beginning.
The big question mark is, does he have enough to try and break that slipstream after his pit stops? Will his stop be quick enough in the end? As the drivers fly towards the penultimate corner, we ride on board with third place Camilleri. Now behind Lucetta. Who comes in this time? Who stays out? I heard something from Vincent Brame, who seems a little bit unhappy, and these two are staying out, but Reeder is coming in.
Indeed, and Joe, just a quick report on Vincent Brame. It looks like that was some problems with lap traffic that caught him out. Brame is now in the wall. He's out of the race.
Oh, yeah. They just unfortunately spaced themselves wrong in the slipstream. And they came together at high speeds. All of them wound up damaged and in the barrier. Okay, we've now got Brain pitting. We've got Wilford pitting. Mild is also in. We're missing 5 cars from here. Perez, Camilleri, Lucetta, Durr, and Gruel.
And bad news there for Manuel Lucetta as David Burns getting into hammer time, setting the fastest lap of the race with a 25.3. Joe, that is a full second faster than your current points leader, Manuel Lucetta's last lap on track.
I think he had the help of Zauer and Potacek, who he's now ahead of. They were behind him before when we last looked, but it's going to swap around yet again. Still, those good pace laps are definitely going to help out and maybe keep them ahead of Lucetta, our points leader, coming through the inner loop. We're still 15 minutes left to go. There is plenty of racing to be had, but Perez is in. Lucetta is not, and Camilleri follows.
All right, so that's at least going to help Lucetta out, but I think where Perez comes out is going to be a good indicator to see what Lucetta needs to do, if he's going to be okay or if he's going to be in trouble. But there you see Camilleri going around Lucetta through the 90. That's going to be good. That's going to give Lucetta the draft up through the S's.
A little bit of lap traffic in front of him. Pete's just going to stay off to the side. The 7 not providing any sort of hassle for those two. Durr getting overtaken by our leaders as he's now in. Perez returning to the track. Where is Sauer? He is going to be right with our front group.
All right, well, that's at least a little bit of solace for Manuel Lucetta. He comes out, Perez does, about 1.8 seconds ahead of Ludwig Sauer. I think this is going to be very, very tight with Lucetta.
Interesting. So if that's anything to go by, then Lucetta should be able to exit ahead of them. I think that's out of the slipstream. It's down to 1.7, 1.6. But again, they've got people to work together with, so they can try and leapfrog one another, and they might still be able to run down Perez. We'll have to watch the lap times once they get full laps in. Perez on his out lap right now, so hard to tell. And our two leaders finally pit with only 13 minutes to go.
All right, Joe, and Perez's pit stop was long. It was about 15 seconds stationary in the box. We're normally seeing around 13s from everybody else that came in quickly. So let's see what these two do. If they've got a quick stop, I think they may be able to pull this out. Oh!
Cammareri misses his stall, but Lucetta did not. He was clean in. What's the lap time going to be like, or the stop time going to be like, rather? Perez is through. Oh my goodness, Perez is a long ways up. In fact, Lucetta did the opposite of what we expected. Lucetta has lost out. He is behind this entire group and might be just on the verge of the slipstream. It's settling in at about 1.5 seconds. He is going to have to hustle.
He really, really is. He got completely caught out here in no man's land, so he is just going to have to pray that Podacek, Sauer, and Burns scrap a little bit, and that'll be able to gain him some time. 1.93 seconds as he crosses over the crest of the S's. That is a big gap to make up.
So here's where things stand now that our pit stops are done. It's not much use telling you the exact order, except for our solo drivers like Perez, who is our leader. But next group down includes 3, Sauer, Burns, and Podacek, second, third, and fourth. Then you get back to 5th, another solo car, Lucetta. And then it's another group. Cammareri is with Lucal, Neptune, Reeder, and Brain. So 5 cars taking you all the way back to 10th place.
Exactly, and now for Burns, Sauer, and Podacek is a game to see if they can close in that 1.7 second gap up to Christian Perez. It's going to be very, very difficult.
26-1 for Perez, and Burns at the front of that group, a 26-2, so a 10th down. That's, I mean, it's still not dire as they've got time, but they're going to have to start making inroads if they actually want to catch and challenge Perez. And bad news for fans of Lucetta, he's falling off. It's up to 2.1 seconds.
Yeah, that is not good news for your points leader. He is very much in no man's land. He has that gap of about 2.2 seconds ahead, and Eric Lucal 2.7 seconds behind him, so he's got nobody to play with around him.
Got 3 wide in the background. Lucal beating out Neptune and Cammareri for 6th place. You see them from above now, swinging it through the carousel. Ooh, way wide up on the corner, though, there. Taylor Reeder making the turn fine, but certainly out of the slipstream and offline compared in front of him.
Yeah, and now they're going to play a little bit nice here. But remember, Joe, what we were talking about earlier, that run down into that corner. Now, that could be the area where we see the final lap pass being made. That's something to watch for. That's something to keep an eye out for. That could be a prime area for it.
Perez last time by, 25.9. 3/10 off of his fastest lap of the race, and that was alone that he just set that 25.9. Compare that to Burns, who did a 26.1, 2/10 off that time. They're dropping.
They are indeed, and that is just a testament to Christian Perez's sheer force of will at that point. Also with Manuel Lucetta, that gap continues to grow. It's now 3 seconds up the road to Wojciech Podacek, so our points leader looking to be in very dire straits.
Ooh, and just squeezing around the outside, Cammareri somehow finding enough width in the track to get past Neptune, who eventually backs out of it into the inner loop. A little bit of a slide there from the Trident as the 666 watches the yellow and blue number 33 get into the 6th position.
And here they come, making their way back on to the main straight. You can see Taylor Reeder there, Frederick Neptune, all of them just slicing around a little bit, thinking about where to go, trying to get around Camilleri. And now they're going to stay in single file order as they make their way through the final 2 corners here, ticking under 9 minutes to go. So definitely starting to think about where you want to be in line for that final lap.
On board with Podacek as he watches Sauer and Burns. Has he resigned himself to it just being a race for best of the rest? Can none of them catch Perez? Up to now 2.5 seconds. Perez with another 25.9. Burns running a 26.3. This could be these drivers fighting for P2 in the end. In fact, it's looking more and more likely that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, exactly. Perez able to pull out another 0.4 of a second on that last lap. He just absolutely flying through this circuit at this point.
As behind them, things continue to be a little bit crazier in that second group. Neptune back ahead of both Reeder and Cammareri, as well as Lucal and Brain. They plunge towards the penultimate corner. You can see them picking up ground, but nobody poking their nose out, at least this time through. When it gets to the final lap, I'm sure that'll be completely different.
Yeah, Joe, and I'm looking at some of these guys, just seeing if anybody's maybe on a bit of a fuel save here, having to save a little bit on the back end of the stint. Camilleri had a very, very quick stop with a 13.9, as did Sauer. Podacek having a remarkably quick stop with only 10 seconds stationary in the box. Wojciech Podacek did, so that may be something to keep in mind. He may have drastically underfueled the car.
Yeah, it's either that or he saved a whole heck of a lot of fuel. He's been around this series for a long, long time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just was soft-shoeing it for this entire time. So we now watch from Reeder. 2 by 2. You see them flying down, and it's going to be 3 by 1 as Cammareri's trying to, they're going to go too wide, and that's going to send our Reeder, unfortunately, off the course. He might have had a slowdown penalty from that, depending on how far to the inside he was running. It looks like the 24 is not giving up time, though. I think he may have gotten away with it, but again, a risky move, and we're not on the final lap yet.
No, that indeed is very lucky there not to pick up a slowdown, and just as lucky not to lose the car. These Skip Barbers do not like to have even the merest millimeter of the tire off into the grass. They are prone to spin out when you do that, so good job to keep it as we jump back up to that battle in for 3rd place. Riding on board with Ludwig Sauer, David Burns right in front of him.
Less than 6 minutes to go. Burns holds the advantage, but is that where he wants to be? It does seem like if you time the slipstream right, it's very hard to defend from. As we watch the 14 of Sauer still hounding the back of him, and Podacek also giving watch. Now, I don't think we've seen Wojciech actually try and overtake them, so that goes back to what we were talking about before. I think he is trying to save a little bit of fuel. Maybe he did cut it a little too tight and is having to sit and wait really before he has enough that he can go.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. And I was just checking out his onboard and listening to the revs. He is definitely doing a lot of lifting, a lot of clutch and coast down those straightaways, just letting the draft do its work for him. So Pocek definitely in fuel economy mode here.
So as they come down to that penultimate turn, one more time, it's all the way up to 3.5 seconds to Christian Perez, who seems to have played this one to perfection. What's even more incredible about Perez is the fact that he came from 18th on the grid, worked his way forward, still jumped everybody somehow with a relatively slower stop than a lot of his nearest rivals. I'm just, oh, and Potacek is in. Potacek did not make enough. He is going to have to take a second stop to get to the end, and this will cost him a lot.
Oh, so upsetting there for Wojciech Potacek, who was running such a great race, already down into 13th position before he has gotten out. I think he's going to shuffle back into 14th. But, yeah, Joe, as you were saying with Christian Perez, I mean, just a mega run here. And it's not like he had a massive incident that netted him 10 or 12 positions. This is all just by force of will.
And some skill and some speed. But, yeah, it's 3.7 seconds now. Going to be 2 to go when we cross the line. So we once again glance back at this battle between Reeder, Neptune, Cammareri, Lucal, and Brain.
And that battle not going away anytime soon. These drivers know that there's about 3.5 minutes to go, so probably 2 or 3 laps to go when our leader Perez crosses the line. So it's definitely starting to get into position time. Wouldn't be super surprised if we see guys hold back a little bit to just try to position themselves best when the white flag flies.
Small correction for myself. 3 laps to go this time by, as they had more than 3 minutes, and they're doing sub-minute-and-a-half laps. So you have to wonder who has figured out the fuel number correctly, the lap number correctly in this race. Watching Cammareri try and chase down Neptune and Reeder after being up with that group that's fighting for second. This has got to feel a little bit disappointing, but still a lot can happen, as we are going to go 3 wide one more time. Reeder down to the inside, Neptune in the middle, Cammareri to the outside. Neptune's not giving it up quick. Now he pulls back and lets the blue and yellow 33 up in front of him, but he goes a little too hot into the corner, off the track and into the grass. Is that one going to stand, or is the sim going to give him a slowdown?
Not sure. There you see just him trying to hold on to that position as they are super close. Local still side by side with him, it looks like.
I think he may have given a little bit back. Oh, is looking to the inside. Frederick Neptune gets his nose in and isn't able to pass, but he's definitely right on the back of the 33 and challenging. 2 to go.
This is where it is all starting to be about thinking where you want to be on that last lap. Do you want to try to make the move to go forward up into the inner loop? Do you want to try to maybe position yourself, as we've seen the run down into that penultimate corner? That's been a good overtaking opportunity as well. So this is not going to be straightforward, and I certainly think in about a lap's time you could see some interesting fight back from these drivers.
You have to wonder who can keep this one clean, because if they start fighting really hard at the end, there's always a chance that drivers can wind up tangling with one another. We almost went 4 wide in that second group again this time. Lucal is the one that absolutely chucks it in, and that forces Neptune to go side by side with Cammareri, who almost makes contact with Reeder. This is going to be absolutely incredible on the final lap if they're willing to pull moves like that with 2 to go.
Indeed, and we now ride on board with Josh Brain, who in 9th has been able to pull up to the back of this pack, so he may be the biggest gainer out of all of this to be able to really make a good move.
And Perez is just crossing the line, taking the white flag now. 1 lap to go. and he's got a 4.7 second lead, 26.3 last time for Christian compared to a 26.7 for Burns. Some lap traffic in front of him. Here we go, down into the 90. This is where it starts as Camreri's trying to get himself positioned, going to the inside of Neptune. Up ahead of them, that's a lapped car. Pete trying to stay out of the way of this group.
And does a good job there to stay out. You saw some of that brake smoke from a big lockup. Now Camilleri, I think, may have tried to take a bite at that apple a little bit early. It's Camilleri around!
That was what I was fearing. That was Neptune that made contact, and he looks like he's lost pace. He might have been thrown out of the fight now. As up in front, Ludwig Sauer and David Burns are still close together for second place. This one could switch hands here, coming out of the outer loop. Who is going to get the run, and will it be enough? As Sauer has the advantage, has the track position ahead of Burns. Burns looks to the right side. He's going to try to go the long way around, but it'll switch back to the inside on the next corner if he can just hold out, and he will. And he's going to have his nose ahead as out of the final corner, there goes Christian Perez down to the line, taking the victory here today in round 2 of the Formula Neagle. And it is Burns who beats out Sauer with a great last lap pass. Lucetta with 4th.
And behind Lucetta, looks like Lucal, Neptune, Camilleri, and Reeder. That was your order, at least through there. No, that's wrong with Camilleri. Camilleri came into the box. But here comes Bamber trying to make a move down to the inside on, I believe that's Smack, and he hold it.
Through the final corner, looks like he managed it as Jan Mild here in the 16 is still chasing on Neil Bamber, but Bamber's got the advantage. That was Lucal, Reeder, Brain, Gyros, who finished in that 5th to 8th positions back there. Actually had 25 cars, 24 cars finish on the lead lap. Camreri finds himself DNFing, unfortunately, with that end of race accident. Looks like the last of them are going to trickle across, so we're going to take a quick break here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Watkins Glen. Round 2 in the Absolute Beginners League Formula Neagle went to Christian Perez, who kind of snookered all of us, really. We saw a long pit stop. We assumed he wouldn't be a part of it. And then suddenly, next thing we know, he's the only one leading and had lost the likes of David Burns and Ludwig Sauer, who were second and third, respectively. Lucetta was who we had pinned many of our bets on, and he only came out fourth, with Eric Lukl finishing fifth. Taylor Reeder took P6. Josh Brain, riding behind a lot of fast cars, cruised his way to seventh, as Christopher Giros was eighth and Steve Durr ninth. Alexander Wilfert got 10th.
In 11th was the Trident Frederick Neptune, followed by Christopher Crook and Wojciech Podacek, who had to take that second stop there. But very, very good drive to be able to still come home 13th. Christopher Goulet was 14th, followed by Neil Bamber and Jan Mild in 16th. Nick Cardy was 17th, followed by Neil Smet and Andy Saunders, with Pete Thomas rounding out your top 20.
McMullen finished 21st, getting up from 36. He was one of the few that did not get a qualifying time in. Camerari was our first DNF of the night, unfortunately, with a wreck at the very last lap. Sean McKenzie finished 23rd, with Callum Mooney in 24th and Spezial in 25th. First driver a lap down was Bernardi in 26th. Stipek was 27th, Loden 28th, and Preto 29th, with 30th going to Emmerseal.
In 31st was Pete Bladen. You saw him lose that final lap right there near the end. And now we get into some of our non-finishers here. Foltesi, Zambolo, Brim, man behind them. Gustafson in 36th. Dancy, Pianazek in 38th. Louise and Tielgar in 40th.
And that brings us to our first interview of the evening, and that is David Burns, second place here. As David wasn't quite up to pace to keep up with Christian Perez. But before we get to that factor, David, we were kind of surprised that Christian did jump everyone and run away with things, because we were kind of watching out for Lucetta maybe to do that. Were you guys kind of surprised when the pit cycle finished and you saw Christian in front?
I was more surprised at the fact that he started at the back of the grid and he was catching up to the front, because early on somebody's mentioned his name and I was like, no, there's no way he's that close. And then when I saw him on my relative at P4, I was like, oh well, P2 is the best I'm going to be able to do at that speed.
Yeah, and you and Sauer obviously had a chance to try and maybe leapfrog to catch him. It didn't seem to be working. At what point did it become every man for himself?
Well, early on, Ludwig had mentioned that he needed to fuel save a little bit, so he couldn't really afford to leapfrog. But even from the first two laps, Christian's pace was just tremendous. And even on my own, I knew just with a gain of 0.2 or 0.3 a second, it wasn't going to be enough to catch him. So there was little point. So it was pretty early on, and after the pit stop, we decided that it was just going to be between the two of us.
Well, at least that gave you some fun in the end. But I guess the good news is at least we've got a little bit more of a technical track up next with Mid-Ohio. Do you think you can go one better and get yourself a victory out in Ohio?
I think it depends who turns up, to be honest, because we've got some really fast people around. I'll give it my best. Mid-Ohio is one of my favorite tracks. So, yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to it.
I like that positive attitude. Well, that was David Burns. David, who helped make this second place possible for you?
I think it was Ludwig, definitely, because to be honest, he was certainly helping along the way, and he was a great racing.
So some thanks for his competitor from David Burns. As up next, I believe we have, looks like DJ has caught up with Ludwig Sauer, our third place finisher.
Ludwig, it looked like there you were in a great scrap all the way through the race. Obviously, that big draft train at the end, and then a fantastic battle with David Burns to close things out. Talk me through that one.
Yeah, the start of the race was pretty good. They got second grid position thanks to a massive tow from my teammate, Erik. So kudos to him. At the start of the race, it's just basically hanging on, saving fuel. But I was a little bit too short in the pit stop, so I had to save some more towards the end. So David and I tried to leapfrog each other to get to Christian, but we were almost there, but I just didn't have the fuel to to go again. And then they just basically let David do the heavy lifting towards the end and maybe try it at the last lap. But it wasn't meant to be. David was on the pace today.
Oh, he was, but I'd say you were as well. I mean, obviously, even with those pit concerns, I was frankly a little surprised, though, to see the moves working down into those final two corners. And it kind of seemed like a lot of folks realized that about a quarter of the way into the race, that, oh, we've got another overtaking zone in there. Was that something that occurred to you during the race, that was going to become a good overtake area, or was that something that you and everybody else had sort of talked out going in?
No, we didn't talk about it, but on this track there's basically one good spot to not to overtake each other and not lose a lot of time, because it's usually just about saving the fuel and doing the battle at the end of the race.
Gotcha. Well, we head to another track that's known as a little bit more difficult to overtake, Mid-Ohio, one of my personal favorites. How do you feel about it? How do you think things are going to shake out there around those sort of twisty confines?
Well, it's a totally different track, a lot more technical than today. Today is a lot more about hanging on in the draft. And Mid-Ohio is one of my favorite tracks. It's really twisty. I don't think I'll be able to keep it up with the really fast guys, but I will give it my best.
Well, we'll be watching for sure. Ludwig, anybody you'd like to thank today for your third place?
Well, of course, my teammate for the massive tow in the qualifying, and David for towing me towards the end with low fuel.
Thank you, Ludwig. That was your third place finisher, Ludwig Sauer. And now Joe Peak has caught up with Taylor Reeder, who came home in sixth.
Yep, Reeder was in the midst of a lot of the most incredible battles that we saw over the course of today. Taylor, did that make you nervous at any point with some of the aggressive moves that we were seeing? Or are you comfortable in that sort of racing?
I was absolutely nervous. I wasn't sure exactly when to make the overtakes and when to just back off. So there was one time where I went 3 wide and I was in the middle, and I just ended up backing out because I did not want to get taken out. That was the key thing for me in this race. Just try and be careful.
How do you feel about tracks like this with these slipstream battles? I mean, you obviously know what you're getting into going in, but are these ones that you'd rather see less of, or do you like having all the sort of Daytona-esque style racing?
I think they definitely make for good racing. I prefer more technical tracks where it's more turns, more braking zones where you can make overtakes there. But obviously, you can't not love these races because there's so many opportunities for overtaking in there. So yeah, I love it, but I do prefer the more technical tracks.
Now, I haven't been able to see if there's been chatter from the organizers for next season, but iRacing has announced that the Formula V is coming, which is a slightly slower version of this car and pretty universal sort of introduction racing car for a lot of people. If that comes out, is that one you'd like to see replace the old Skippy, or do you think the group should stick with Old Faithful?
I'm not really sure. I'd have to, I guess, drive it. Like you said, I know it's going to be a little bit slower, but I do think this is a good entry level. I think one thing I didn't like is when you were starting, you had to use the Miata, and from my understanding, you're going to be able to use this Formula V for we're straight from the beginning. So I think that's good if you want to do open wheel races. You got to have something to start with before even getting to the Skippy, but I do enjoy the Skippies, so I prefer to see it, and maybe they can make a separate league for that, but I love the Skippies. That's mostly what I drive, so.
That's understandable, and it is a lot of fun. Well, congratulations on a top 10 today, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you out in Ohio as well.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
That was sixth place finisher Taylor Reed, and that's going to close us out. So we want to give a big thank you, of course, once again to the Absolute Beginners League for bringing us back for another season of coverage. But also thank you goes out to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. And thanks to the team today, DJ, Ryan, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com, or you can check out our social media through the outlets listed at the bottom of the screen. And if you'd like to support us, check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storenvy.com, but we keep a link in the description below, so you can just go click that. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race is at Mid-Ohio, Sunday, April 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern, but we also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. A little bit later tonight, the Majors next round, the Musket 250 at New Hampshire will be at 8 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.